Hunter Biden and an FBI money laundering probe. NBC News tries to make more disinformation happen. The final lockdown push. Libs try to blame Trump for everything. And Brett Favre and Lil Wayne go for Trump. Welcome, my friends. Mere days away from the big one. Election day. Over 80 million people voting early. Anticipation could not be any higher. I cannot remember an election in my lifetime where there was such a focus on this from so many people in so many quarters. I think in part because we're all stuck more than ever at home. No distractions of big groups and concerts and crowds and things like that. Less sports, less connectivity with each other. So what do we have? This intense focus on our politics. And also, the truth is that our politics might end up either freeing us or making us even more locked down and miserable. So that's a big choice that we face right now. And that's something that's going on here. I want to start with the Hunter Biden money laundering allegations, though. This just came out yesterday, and a hat tip to James Rosen over at Sinclair for being the guy that broke this story. He says the FBI, or at least FBI sources, have confirmed to him that there was, in 2019, an open money laundering investigation of Hunter Biden. Now this is big for a lot of reasons. And let me first just say that there is zero interest in the media in touching any of this. In fact, NBC News has put forward some 60-some-odd page disinformation, fake intelligence thing. They're debunking the fake intelligence. They say, no one's even heard of this or seen this before. But their claim is, well, because we found something on the internet that isn't true about Hunter Biden, clearly that means that what you guys all think you have with this verified laptop and the emails and the photos and the on-the-record sources saying, yeah, that's me, that must be disinformation too. Yeah, NBC News putting out disinformation to say they're fighting disinformation, which is pretty much where we are now with the journalists in this country. In fact, journalism is never going to recover from what the journos have done to it. That's where we find ourselves. Doesn't matter who wins this election. It's not going to change. We see who they are. We know what they're doing. And this Hunter Biden situation has broken any last defense they have of, well, we still try to present just the facts. We still try to be honest with people about what's going on and not bring our partisan bias to it. So here's why the money laundering situation is so fascinating. First of all, it makes perfect sense. When you see what we already know, that there would be on the record sources talking about millions and millions of dollars changing hands with a Chinese company setting up LLCs. What exactly was Hunter Biden supposed to be paid for here? Consulting services? I mean, how different is this really from the Chinese Communist Party saying, we're going to start buying Hunter Biden's finger paintings at $1 million a pop? Because that's about what Hunter Biden's consulting is worth. So clearly something is up. We've known that all along. This is not the market speaking. This is an influence peddling scheme. And as I have been saying, how is this not illegal? At least someone involved in all of this must have been engaged in quid pro quo corruption. Now, the answer to the question, as you already know, is it's not illegal because they won't charge it, or at least they haven't been willing to yet. And that's how the Democrats play the game. The law is just a function of who's in charge and what you can get away with at any point in time. That's what the law is really about. There's no underlying foundational right or wrong. There's no greater goal or greater good. It's who's got the power to get what they want when they want it. But think about this. The United States Congress, with a Democrat majority in the House, of course, on a party line vote, impeached the president of the United States. And then Senate Democrats plus Mitt Romney, Rhino, voted to remove President Trump from office because he requested a foreign counterpart look into allegations that there was corruption going on with Hunter Biden. They said this was all fake. You remember this? They pushed this whole impeachment narrative by promising the American people, the Democrats, the journos, the mainstream media, they promised, they assured us there's nothing there. There's no corruption whatsoever. He was trying to get the Ukrainian government to manufacture corruption allegation. Here's the problem, friends. That never made any sense. It was always an obvious lie, but now we can prove it. Because what you really have is the President of the United States talking to a foreign counterpart on the phone and asking about something that not only should have been investigated by Ukrainian authorities, but was under investigation already by U.S. federal authorities. Sorry, there's no exemption for Hunter Biden gets to break the law because it would look bad for daddy. It doesn't exist. And yet this information did not come out. I will ask you this, and we all know the answer, but it's worth posing the question anyway. What do you think would have happened if Donald Trump Jr. was under federal investigation for money laundering while Donald Trump was running or while Donald Trump was president? Do you think that information would have stayed under wraps? Do you think that would have been kept quiet? No, as we know, there are deep state Democrat and leftists out there who will break their oath to the Constitution to attack this president. They will disclose classified information. They will violate the privacy of American citizens using the intelligence apparatus to do so, as we saw with General Flynn and the leaks that were published in the Washington Post about his phone call. Again, another phone call, nothing wrong with it. He said nothing wrong, and he did not lie. Yet he's still facing prosecution. Yet he's still facing this Kafkaesque nightmare of a judge who won't allow the prosecution to end the case. It's also transparent now, isn't it? It's also very clear. Whatever it takes to defeat Trump. However they have to lie, however they have to change the subject when that's necessary, whatever they have to do to stop President Trump, the mainstream media, the Democrat Party entirely justifies it. Whatever works. Hunter Biden was under FBI money laundering investigation, and they impeached the President of the United States based upon the premise that he was fabricating the possibility that the then vice president's son was going around the world collecting millions of dollars for nothing other than a bribe. Let's use the B word, folks. It was a bribe. Get your dad to like us. Get your dad to do what we want. Get your dad to be in our pocket. Here's $1 million. Here's $5 million, 10 million, whatever it is. Yeah. Venal, corrupt people, friends. That's who they've offered up to take over for Trump. And remember, the biggest pitch they give you for Joe Biden is you can trust him. He's a good guy. He's an honorable guy. That's just all a fraud. That's all branding. It's all PR. As I've been telling you all along, Joe Biden's just about Joe Biden. Everything else is a distraction. Everything else is a complete myth. And now we see it with the Hunter Biden FBI investigation. Let's just say this. Money laundering, if you get caught doing it, penalties are very severe. And when you're moving money from overseas into newly constituted LLCs and taking consulting fees, and that's all the kind of stuff that raises red flags when they're doing financial audits, when they're doing a forensic analysis of your financial activity, something I know a bit about from my days working in the counterterrorism beat. When you start looking at bank accounts and money, one of the ways you get people is on their financial crimes. And there's a lot of ways that this can go very badly for somebody who happens to come under the eye of the federal government on this issue. And then there's the other possibility, and one that I don't think we'll find out before the election, but it would add up, wouldn't it? Hunter Biden's under investigation for money laundering. You don't think that there's any way that maybe they created a dummy LLC, just a straightforward limited liability corporation for consulting services from China or from Ukraine or wherever? Notice how it's always these countries, too, that are shady and corrupt and have opposition to U.S. interests at heart. He's not doing these consulting agreements with the French. He's not doing them with Canada. But if you were going to try to funnel money to the big guy, you know what you'd have to do? You'd have to create pass-throughs and LLCs. You'd have to engage in money laundering to hide the source of money to get it to him. And if you thought that nobody would ever look into your stuff and that the guy you were passing money to was either going to be the most powerful man in the world or close friend of the most powerful people in the world, you might even engage in a bit of recklessness. You might even have a bit of hubris about what you could get away with. You might even be Hunter Biden. I recently got a crash course in home title theft, and you better pray this crime never happens to you because it can ruin you financially. Here's how it works. Cyber thieves find your home's title online because it exists there. It's on servers. It's in the cloud. And then they use a quitclaim deed to kick you off, put themselves on, and then take out loans against the equity in your home. You often won't find out about this until you get payment demands in the mail or perhaps even a foreclosure notice. You have to go with the experts I trust at Home Title Lock. They can create a virtual barrier around your home's title. All you have to do is go to HomeTitleLock.com and use the promo code RADIO for 30 free days of protection. You can also check at the site to see if you're a victim of this crime and don't even know it. Again, that's HomeTitleLock.com, promo code RADIO. That will get you 30 free days of protection. And when you type in your home address, you can see if you're a victim of home title theft already, which some people are. Check it out today. Create a virtual barrier around your home's title with HomeTitleLock.com, promo code RADIO.
It was a wonderful birthday present for Hillary Clinton to confirm Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court Monday night on her birthday. Oh, I'm sure she was so grateful.
Cocaine Mitch letting Hillary know, throwing a brushback pitch to Hillary there, letting her know, that's right, still not President Hillary. I like when Mitch gets a little feisty. I like when Mitch decides to let it rip a bit. Friends, the only way we get justice, the only way we get to a place here where there's accountability for all the lies that have been told in the media is if we win. We won with Amy Coney Barrett, and we need to win both the presidency and the Senate majority. Need to keep it. Or else it's going to be a tough 4 years. I'm not going to lie to you. It's going to be rough. It's not going to go the way it should for this country right now. And it's in part because the elites are entirely unrepentant about any of this. Even Bernie Sanders out there, who's worth a few $1 million himself, he's admitting that, yeah, you know what? The Democrat Party is the party of coastal elites. Play two.
You're making a very important point that is not made often enough, to be honest with you. And that is, I think it is fair to say that in many ways, the Democratic Party has become a party of the coastal elites, folks who have a lot of money, upper middle class people, who are good people, who believe in social justice in many respects. But I think for many, many years, the Democratic Party has not paid the kind of attention to working class needs that they should have.
See, the Democrat Party is controlled by people who don't care about working class people, aren't working class people, and want to do whatever they can to make sure that they don't suffer from any of the social maladies that they inflict on working class people, whether it's through defunding the police or unrestricted illegal immigration or all these different things. They want to make sure that they get to live in very wealthy enclaves, watch CNN or MSNBC at night, and think that they're good people because they care so much about the poor people. And they've just convinced the poor people, the people who are low wage or low income or whatever the preferred nomenclature is of the moment. They want to convince people that are in the struggle. Let's say that. I say that respectfully. People that are struggling to make it happen, make it all come together. Democrats want to convince them that they care about them, really for the benefit of Democrat power, and also because the people that run that party like to feel good about themselves. They have no connection. It doesn't matter to them. They don't live in poor neighborhoods. They don't live in high crime areas. But what they've managed to do is convince a substantial portion of the low-income Americans. Remember, most low-income Americans are white. I think that's often left out in discussions about this. But they've managed to convince a large portion of low-income Americans who are non-white that they must vote against Republicans just because Republicans are racist. That's the real pitch. Republicans don't like you for who you are. A vicious lie, but that is what they've done. The identity politics that they rely on is toxic but useful for them. Right? And so that's where we continue to be with all of this. That's why Bernie Sanders even recognizes, the wokeness. This is a self-fulfilling prophecy for the Democrat Party, where no one is going to be acceptable to the inner circle of the Democrat Party. It's going to just keep consuming itself, kind of like the Soviets and the Politburo under Stalin. No one is going to be left-wing enough if they get their way, and so they're just going to go through these constant spasms, these moments of panic. Things like the BLM rise this year. Oh, my gosh, all the left-wing, anything for BLM, and corporate America, everyone bending the knee. Did that help working-class people? Did BLM make any neighborhood safer? I mean, that's really the biggest political contribution you could say this year from the Democrat Party. That and terrifying everybody beyond reason about COVID-19. So BLM, that's a movement that's supposed to be about helping the oppressed. It's supposed to be about defending those who can't defend themselves. Very worthy goals, if that's in fact what's going on. Did that happen? No, it didn't happen. What really did occur as a result of BLM? People who were paid a lot of money to be in newsrooms or on air-conditioned, comfortable TV sets with lots of lighting and hair and makeup assistants and everything, talked a lot to other people who can work remotely at home and still get their paychecks and, have plenty of money to spend on the fanciest lattes, to convince them that, they're the good people because they care about BLM. That's the whole system. It's all a charade. They didn't do anything in poor neighborhoods, minority majority neighborhoods that have high crime rates. They didn't do anything for them. It didn't help them. And in a sense, that's just a microcosm, or that's just another piece of, I think, very compelling evidence about what the Democrat Party's become today. While Joe Biden's out there talking about jobs and helping people and all this stuff, they're going to take more stuff from you, give it to some other people, make sure they get their votes as a result of that, tell people that, the Republicans don't like them because of their ethnicity, their race, their religion, whatever it may be. Identity politics, spreading the virus of spiteful identity politics, which is what Democrats do. It's also destructive. It's really quite ironic that the Biden campaign's slogan is Build Back Better, because like so many things you see from Democrats, they're telling you the exact opposite of what the truth will be. They're not going to build back better. They're just going to take more from you and give it to other people and then make sure that they get their vote in the process. And that's all that matters. And not even make their lives better.
But we are ready. I feel very confident that Joe Biden will be elected president on Tuesday, whatever the end count is. But on the election that occurs on Tuesday, he will be elected. On January 20th, he will be inaugurated president of the United States. So while we don't want to be overconfident or assume anything, we have to be ready for how we are going to go down a different path.
What the heck does that mean? He's going to be elected no matter what the
He'll be elected. Doesn't matter if he wins, he will win.
He'll be elected no matter what the final vote count is. Did you catch that? It kind of got lost there in a big old Chardonnay glass with Nancy. What was that? No matter what the final vote tally is, Joe Biden will be the president. You imagine if Trump said that? It would be its own news cycle for 24 hours, or if anyone who supported Trump said that. But that's where things are these days, friends. And they're boarding up stores right now in D.C. as we speak. That's how much Democrats care about democracy. I just want to know, is this a little bit like the sports team fans who will riot and light cars on fire when their team wins and when their team loses? I mean, do Democrats riot no matter what after this election? I'm thinking probably. And the bigger point for me is, okay, why is that okay? Why is it normal for us to just assume, and everyone does assume, that there'll be Biden voters, people of the left, whether Antifa, which, as I say, is, I believe, a mental illness, Antifa or BLM activists or whatever the radicals are calling themselves in that moment, they're going to destroy stuff in a place like D.C. If stores are going to be looted, it's not going to be anybody wearing MAGA hats. Why is it that Trump supporters are just more lawful, more law-abiding in their public actions? I mean, I'm asking that question rhetorically. I could go into, I think, details about why that is. I think the left is the party of the mob. I think they believe in moral relativism and me, and emotion over reason, and there's a lot. But we just accept it. And they act like that's not something we should point out. We shouldn't stand back and say, hold on a second. They're boarding up stores in preparation for the election in case Trump wins, and then we know there's going to be violence and mayhem in the street. But vote for that party. Vote for the party that seems so comfortable with the lunatics who are entirely within its confines that everybody just goes, I guess there's going to be some rioting if Trump wins. What can you do? It's the price of democracy. I disagree. But this brings us to our recurring conclusion here, which is that the left has absolutely and completely lost its mind. They are nuts, right? The far left, the Democrat Party in particular, is just bonkers. Simply and utterly bonkers. And they're not going to rein them in, so what happens in a Biden presidency? Well, I think we all know. It becomes the stealth AOC left wing of the party presidency, with Joe Biden mouthing the usual pablum, putting out the usual nincompoopery about, we're going to build 1 million jobs and we're going to do this other thing. And, no joke, man, period. No joke. Yeah, it's going to be a really inspiring presidency. So that's what we're facing. And you also will have the prospect of the same media apparatus, the apparatchiks of the MSM, that have made it, it is beyond not even a reason, it's beyond an unreasonable doubt that they're Democrat partisan. We couldn't have any more proof at this point. It couldn't be any more clear. They've shown us. They've effectively signed sworn declarations. We are, CNN should be DNCNN, right? These places are completely in the tank for Democrats, actively working toward their reelection. They should be paid employees of the Biden campaign at the New York Times, at CNN. These are places that should just be honest about what they're doing, but they won't do that. They won't do that because they still like to pretend, even though nobody who's intelligent and informed believes these places are honest anymore. There's a weird joy that the left-wing Democrat audience gets over from watching news organizations that are just feeding them what they want all the time and telling them that it's neutral. See, I watch the neutral stuff over at MSNBC. I watch the real journalism on ABC News. These places are all jokes. And I think the internet would have already broken many of these institutions if they could not count on the assistance of the tech giants, too. It's unfortunate. Really, conservatives, I wish we would understand the game that we're in here. I wish we'd understand that we've got to start controlling institutions, too. Any institution that is not controlled by conservative interests who will at least keep it fair will be far left. That's because they purge. Because like all authoritarians and totalitarians, they can't abide other thought. Oh, what's the latest example of this? Glenn Greenwald, who is a left-wing guy. And I don't mean a little bit. I mean, Glenn Greenwald, you have never heard somebody say so many favorable things about Palestinian radical terrorism, who's a mainstream journalist, as you will Glenn Greenwald, right? I mean, this guy, he's a man of the left. There's no question about it. And you do get the sense that he kind of hates the U.S. federal government as a general proposition. That said, he does do what he says he will do, which is chase down stories that are of interest and print them regardless of which party will be affected. Now, I'm not saying he does a perfect balance, but I don't think anybody could do a perfect balance. He's still a man of the left, but he will write things and he will say things that libs do not want to hear. It should be noted that there are journalists on the left, Glenn Greenwald, Matt Taibbi, there are a handful of them who disagree with you and me on almost everything. I mean, 95% of stuff, maybe more. But they were willing to just look at the insanity of the Russia collusion farce and say, guys, there's no there. We got nothing here. There's no evidence for this. It's just relying on a lot of innuendo from Democrats working in the federal government as nonpartisan intelligence professionals to then journalists who quote each other about the nonpartisan anonymous sources that are leaking them information when they never even see the information and they don't know. There's no verification. And the whole Russia collusion thing was the self-immolation of journalism in America. And a couple of people on the left, Greenwald was one of them, were willing to say that. They were willing to be honest about it. And for that, they should be commended. Credit where it is due, as you know, one of my mantras here on the show. They deserve the high five for that. Well, Greenwald founded this far left publication called The Intercept. And they've published some very nasty stuff. And, I think that I have a slightly different take on this whole thing than everybody else, and I'll get into that in a minute. A variation, not a overwhelmingly different takeaway, but a variation on it. It turns out that when Greenwald wanted to print something recently at The Intercept, which he is a founder of, and which was funded by a left-wing billionaire named Pierre Omidyar, who founded eBay, it turned out that when he was doing this, right, when he was trying to write an editorial the last week or two on Joe Biden and the Hunter Biden, it was really about the Hunter Biden emails. The people that are the managing editors at The Intercept, this far left publication that's supposed to be unafraid, straight journalism, truth to power stuff. That's the mission of the organization. Well, what Greenwald found out is that that's a fraud and that that's not welcome on the left. And he had these editors. Remember, he's the founder of the publication. This would be like someone coming on the Buck Sexton show and telling me what I can talk about on radio. Like, that's not going to fly. He's the founder, but he's being told by his editors, you can't write that. And he's published the exchanges, and it couldn't be any more clear. The rationalizations, what you see are people who are like, you can't write that because that'll hurt Joe, and we need Joe to win. That's it. And this gives you a window into the mentality that exists at every media publication that is about news in the country that is not identified as at least right of center. Every single, and there aren't that many right of center publications, every single news publication in the country that is not right of center has that same mentality. Every single one of them, without fail. There are people, if not everybody, the majority, the decision makers, will shut down a story because it hurts Joe. Yeah. Because they're all doing one thing and one thing only, trying to get this guy elected. And they view that as their purpose. Because think about how much value there really is in what many of these news organizations do. I'm just going to take you in a little bit of inside baseball here for a second. A lot of them do just aggregation. They do reprints of AP stories. They change the headline. They throw a couple of photos up and they share it out on social media. Their real value add is in editorial and in commentary. That's the truth of most news media organizations these days. But they're not honest about that, because then they're just competing with other people, and it's, well, who's a better polemicist? And they have to be held to account for what they write as opinions instead of, oh, I'm just reporting, man. I'm just doing my reporting. But it's not true. What I think is so interesting here from the perspective of Greenwald, who's now left, he resigned from the publication he founded because of the groupthink and the willingness to prostrate themselves on the left entirely for the support of Joe Biden. Well, he should be commended for that, but I also would note, the left is where this is happening. This does not happen on the right in this way. And there's a reason for that, because the left wing of American politics has embraced an authoritarian view, and they've been taught to weaponize institutions and government as just instruments of raw power without any good faith or without any sense of shared principle with the other side. They have been going scorched earth for a long time, and that's the only thing they know how to do now. They don't know how to have a conversation in between two sides that both have valid points of view. They only have, you stop because your words are like violence. You can't say that. That's sexist. That's racist. That's fill in the blank. Is it? Well, I mean, do we ever get to, is it a fact? Is it true? Is it an opinion? Is it policy? No. It's sexist. It's xenophobic. That's all that it comes down to now. Name calling and deplatforming and doxing and punishing ideological opponents. This leads to bad outcomes. When you see the nature of the individuals and the ideas at the heart of, say, the French Revolution, it's not surprising that about 15 to 20,000 people were taken to the guillotine, a vast majority of whom did nothing to anyone, right? It's not surprising. When you understand the nature and character of the people and the ideas at the heart of the Soviet Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution that led to the Soviet Union, there's nothing surprising about that. And when you see what the left wing of American politics has turned into today, just this vicious, preening, idiocy brigade, not surprising at all. And so there's a part of me that says, well, good for Greenwald for walking away from the fact that the place is a fraud, but also maybe there's some lesson to be taken here about how if you're going to be a left-wing journalist, you're going to be surrounded with frauds all the time. Because that is actually the culture of the left now. It's not an exception, it's the rule. Maybe there's a little bit more that one should look into here. And also the ideas that all those people hold, problematic.
I have many people who I love in my life. And yeah, I come from a red state. I've lived in several red states. There are a lot of friends who I had to really get rid of because they are so nonsensical when it comes to this issue. They have every single talking point that they hear on state TV and that they hear from this president. They repeat it and they are blinded by it. And when I said to you the other night, there's no way, they can't believe it. They can't, I was just goosing you in a way, right? What they say, I was,
Yeah, goosing
I was breaking
works.
your,
Goosing works. It won't. It's
Okay.
not like that'll be all over the city. We'll continue.
But here's the thing. I had to get rid of them because they are too far gone. I try and I try and I try. They'll say something really stupid, and then I'll show them the science and I'll give them the information, and they still repeat those talking points. And all the while, the state was a hot spot.
You only see this on the Democrat side, really. You only hear about it, at least on the Democrat side. People that say, I had to cut someone out of my life because they would not share my politics. In fact, there have been a series of these TikTok videos of people. One guy was even made a TikTok video about how his dad was dying and he was going to have to cut his dad out of his life, even though his dad was dying toward the very end, because he was a Trump supporter. And then the big moment of happiness, and this guy lights up toward the end of his little video is, but my dad told me recently that he voted for Joe Biden. And it's like, well, now I love my dad again. This person's a psychopath. That's weird. That's not normal. All right. People have different views of a lot of things for a whole bunch of reasons. Your personal relationships, the way you treat people around you, the way you conduct yourself in your day-to-day life, that's what really matters. One vote out of 150 million that are 160 million that are going to be cast means nothing. Now, that said, go vote for Donald Trump. Don't pay attention to what I did. But you know what I mean. Morally, ethically speaking, when you're talking about family members, and every year the Democrats have these, it only happens on the Democrat side, how to talk to your crazy conservative uncle. Well, first of all, why is the conservative always the uncle? Conservatives are like the moms and the dads. Okay, that's why. It's always the uncle. But no offense to the uncles out there. I'm one, so I'm in the uncle category without a kid of my own yet. But they always have this need to act like there's some tremendous forbearance that they have to engage in just to have people around them that don't agree with them. I actually rather like having conversations with people that don't agree. I like arguing even with my own siblings about, how I think a movie is terrible that they think is great, or that I think a person is really cool that they think is awful, or whatever it is. Exchange of ideas is about intellectual vitality. The left wants none of that. Conformity, the false security of consensus. They're obsessed with it. It is central to left-wing thinking.